The silence in our house had grown teeth. It started subtly, a few months ago, like a hairline crack in a foundation you choose to ignore. Sarah, my wife of 10 years, the woman whose every breath I once felt I knew, had become a stranger in her own home. It wasn't one big thing, it was 1,000 tiny paper cuts to the heart of our marriage. Her phone, once left carelessly on the kitchen counter, was now always screened down or tucked away in her purse. She'd jump when I walked into the room while she was texting, a flicker of something I couldn't name. Guilt? Annoyance? Flashing in her eyes before being replaced by a smile that didn't quite reach them. Then came the hushed phone calls. She'd take them in the garden or locked in the bathroom, her voice a low, urgent murmur. When I'd ask who it was, the answers were always vague. Just work, a friend from college, a wrong number. The excuses were flimsy, transparent, and each one felt like a small shovel of dirt being tossed onto the coffin of my trust. She started dressing up for errands, perfume to go to the grocery store, a silk blouse to visit the post office. My mind, a fertile ground for suspicion, began to cultivate dark and thorny possibilities. We'd been together since we were 22. We'd built a life, a home. We were supposed to be planning a trip to Italy for our 10th anniversary, but now I felt like I was planning a one-man surveillance operation. The breaking point came on a Tuesday, a gray, drizzly afternoon that matched the mood inside me. Sarah came downstairs wearing her favorite blue dress, the one she wore on our third date. She looked beautiful, radiant even, and it twisted a knife in my gut. "I'm just heading out for a bit, Mark," she said, her voice breezy. "Need to run a few errands, pick some things up." "Oh yeah? Where to?" I tried to sound casual, but my voice was tight, a strained wire. "Just around. I won't be long." She kissed my cheek, a fleeting, cool press of her lips, and was out the door before I could ask another question. The scent of her jasmine perfume lingered in the air, mocking me. That was it. I couldn't take it anymore. The not knowing was eating me alive, hollowing me out from the inside. I needed to know the truth, no matter how ugly. Grabbing my car keys, I felt a tremor in my hands. A part of me screamed to stop, to trust the woman I had vowed to love for a lifetime, but a louder, more insidious voice whispered that trust was for fools. I slipped out the side door and got into my car, parking it a few houses down the street. A few minutes later, her little red Honda pulled out of our driveway. I gave her a block's head start, my heart hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. And then I followed. For the first 10 minutes, my paranoia felt foolish. She drove to the dry cleaners. She stopped at the bank's ATM. Normal errands. I started to relax, a wave of shame washing over me. What kind of man was I?
A jealous, possessive husband spying on his wife. But then, she didn't turn towards the grocery store or the mall. She headed downtown, towards a part of the city we rarely visited, a neighborhood of old brick buildings and quiet, tree-lined streets I didn't recognize. My suspicion flared back to life, hot and sharp. This was it. She parked in front of a flower shop. I watched from across the street as she went inside. My mind raced. Was she buying flowers for him? A romantic gesture for her lover? She came out a few minutes later with a bouquet of white lilies. Lilies, the kind you give for funerals. A cold dread seeped into my bones, but I pushed it away, replacing it with anger. Maybe it was some kind of sick inside joke they had. My stomach churned. She got back in her car and drove another 5 blocks, finally parking in front of a large, anonymous-looking brick building. It wasn't an office, and it didn't look like an apartment complex. It had a quiet, sterile feel to it, with perfectly manicured hedges and a discreet sign I couldn't read from my vantage point. My imagination filled in the blanks. A discreet hotel? A private club? My hands were slick with sweat on the steering wheel. She got out, holding the lilies, and stood by the entrance, checking her phone. My world narrowed to the sight of her, my wife, waiting for someone who wasn't me. After a minute, a figure emerged from the building's entrance. I couldn't see them clearly, just a silhouette against the doorway. They embraced. It wasn't a quick, friendly hug. It was long, tight, and desperate. I saw Sarah's shoulders shake, and she buried her face in the other person's shoulder. All the air left my lungs. I felt a physical pain in my chest, a crushing weight of betrayal. It was real. Everything I had feared was real. They stood there for what felt like an eternity before finally going inside together. The door closed, and she was gone. I was left alone in my car, the silence deafening. The entire sequence, from leaving the house to her disappearing into that building, had taken less than an hour. 1 hour. 60 minutes was all it took to detonate a decade of marriage. I didn't know what to do. Should I storm in there? Confront them? The thought of the scene, the screaming, the denial, made me feel sick. No, I would be cold, calculated. I would go home and wait for her to return with her lies. I drove home in a daze, the city lights blurring through my tear-filled eyes. I replayed the hug over and over in my mind, each viewing adding another layer of detail, another twist of the knife. I imagined their conversation, their secret rendezvous, the life she was living behind my back. By the time I got home, my heartbreak had curdled into a cold, hard rage. She came home 2 hours later. The lilies were gone. Her eyes were red-rimmed and puffy, but she tried to hide it. "Long day," she sighed, forcing a smile. The lines were everywhere.
The lie was so blatant, so insulting, it was like a slap in the face. I remained silent, sitting in the armchair in the dimly lit living room. I let the silence stretch, letting her feel my coldness. "Mark, is everything okay?" she asked, her voice laced with uncertainty. "I don't know, Sarah. Why don't you tell me?" I said, my own voice dangerously calm. "How were your errands?" "They were fine, just errands." "Really? Because I find that interesting. You went to a part of town we never go to. You bought flowers, and then you met someone. You hugged them like your life depended on it and went inside a building with them. So please, tell me more about these errands." The color drained from her face. She looked like I had physically struck her. Her mouth opened, but no words came out. She just stared at me, a look of pure, unadulterated horror in her eyes. "You followed me?" she whispered, the words barely audible. "You're damn right I did," I exploded, the rage finally breaking free. I stood up, my body trembling. "Did you think I was an idiot? The secrets, the phone calls, dressing up to go out. Who is he, Sarah? Who are you screwing behind my back after 10 years of marriage? Who was that you were meeting?" She sank onto the couch, her body seeming to collapse in on itself. The fight I expected, the denial I was prepared for, never came. Instead, she began to sob. Not quiet tears, but wrenching, soul-shattering sobs that shook her entire frame. It wasn't the reaction of someone caught in a lie. It was something else. It was grief. You really think I would do that to you?" She choked out between sobs, looking up at me with eyes so full of pain that it momentarily stunned me into silence. "What else was I supposed to think?" I shot back, though my anger was already beginning to falter, replaced by a creeping confusion. She took a shaky breath, wiping at her tears with the back of her hand. "The building you saw me go into, Mark, it's called St. Jude's Hospice Care." The name hit me like a ton of bricks. Hospice. "The person I was meeting," she continued, her voice trembling, "was my sister." "Your sister, Emily. I thought you two weren't speaking." Sarah and her younger sister had a falling out years ago, a stupid fight over family inheritance that had spiraled into 5 years of bitter silence. "We started talking again 3 months ago," she said softly, "because she called me to tell me she has stage 4 pancreatic cancer. They gave her 6 months to live. 3 months ago. My entire world tilted on its axis. The blood drained from my face. I felt cold, numb. She's dying, Mark. She's there in that building, dying. She made me promise not to tell anyone, especially you. She knows we've been struggling financially, and she didn't want to be a burden. She didn't want your pity. She just wanted me in the end." Suddenly, it all made a horrifying kind of sense. The hushed calls were with doctors or with her sister, crying.
The secret trips weren't to a lover's embrace, but to a deathbed. The perfume was her trying to feel normal for a few hours. The lilies, the white lilies, weren't for a lover. They were for a dying sibling. "The hug," I stammered, my voice a croak. "I saw you hug someone." "That was Emily," she whispered. "She can still walk a little. She met me at the door. I was crying because the doctor told me today it won't be long now. Maybe a week? I was holding on to my little sister because she's about to leave me forever." The weight of what I had done crashed down on me. I hadn't just been wrong. I had committed an act of profound cruelty. While my wife was shouldering the immense secret burden of her sister's impending death, I was trailing her like a predator, my mind filled with sordid, selfish fantasies of betrayal. I had taken her deepest pain and twisted it into a personal insult. "Sarah, I'm so sorry," I whispered,
the words feeling pathetic and inadequate. I didn't know. She looked at me, and the love I was used to seeing in her eyes was gone. It was replaced by a void, a deep, chilling emptiness. "No, you didn't know," she said, her voice flat, devoid of emotion. "You didn't trust me. You thought the absolute worst of me. For weeks, while I was trying to figure out how to say goodbye to my sister, you were building a case against me in your head. You didn't come to me and ask why I was sad. You didn't hold me and tell me we could get through whatever it was together. You followed me. You hunted me." She stood up and walked past me towards the stairs. "The affair you imagined in your head would have been easier to forgive than this," she said, her back to me. "This wasn't about another person, Mark. This was about you and me. And you showed me that after 10 years, you don't know me at all. You don't trust me." She went upstairs and packed a bag. I just stood there, paralyzed by my own monstrous stupidity. An hour later, she came down, her face a pale, tear-streaked mask. "I'm going to stay at a hotel near the hospice," she said. "I need to be with my sister. And after that, I don't think I can come home." And just like that, she walked out the door I had walked through just hours earlier, filled with righteous anger. Now it closed on a life I had single-handedly destroyed. I followed my wife for 1 hour, and in that hour, I didn't uncover an affair. I uncovered my own failure as a husband, as a partner, as a man, and in that same hour, I lost my marriage forever, not to another man, but to the poison of my own suspicion.